Shalom, Shabbat Shalom, everyone. We're going to try this really groovy introductory song. The words come from Psalm 98, and it's on page 16 or 134. And I want you to count down 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 lines in the Hebrew. Yiram Hayam Umaloo. Let the sea and all within it thunder. Let the world and its inhabitants. Let the rivers clap their hands. Bum, bum. When you hear the rhythm, you could clap along with it or sing along with it. Naharot Yimcha Uchaf. All right, here we go. Yiram Hayam Umaloo. We're going to continue now with Hine Matov. I believe the words are there on page 10. Also known as 128 in the Big Blue Book. Here you go. Yeah.
Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
Some of you are wearing masks, so it's a little harder to hear you. So I'm just going to ask one more time. Shabbat Shalom.
Shabbat Shalom.
It's so wonderful to see you here, and thank you for coming out despite all that we're contending with in our world on this evening and this week. And I want to welcome all of those who have joined us online. Thank you for extending our Mishkan right into your homes or wherever you are on this Shabbat evening. I want to particularly welcome a colleague, Serena Eisenberg, Rabbi Serena Eisenberg, who is the regional director of the AJC, who's here with us this evening. And she's brought some special guests here tonight from the Consulate of Japan for San Francisco. So I want to particularly welcome the Deputy Consul, Mr. Kusayama Satoru, who's here. And he's here with his colleagues, Mr. Kobayashi and Ms. Hanamoto. So I want to thank you for coming and joining us tonight. And I want to also insist that we treasure this evening. As the last few weeks have taught us, we thought we were clear, or we were feeling so clear of so much of this pandemic, but of course we're starting to feel some new constrictions. It's wonderful, though, that we can come into this beautiful place on this beautiful evening and be here together very safely, I promise you. So let's treasure this time together, and let's enjoy this moment of welcoming Shabbat together. And to begin that process of welcoming Shabbat, I want to invite forward Max Spear and his family to light our lights for Shabbat. We're on page 2 or 120. Come on up.
Page 5.
Baruch atah Adonai
Eloheinu melech haolam, borei peri hagafen.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kishanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho v'ahava uvratzon imchilanu zikaron le'maaseh b'reishit ki hu yom tefillah v'mikra'ei kodesh zecher l'tziat Mitzrayim kivanu v'charta v'otanu kidashta mikol ha'amim v'shabbat kodshecha v'ahava uv'ratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat.
a sip, Max? It's wine. No, it's grape juice. So sorry, it's grape juice.
The best wine you've ever had.
Mazel tov.
Thank you.
We continue now together with the singing of Lecha Dodi, pages 20 or 138. We're singing verses 1, 2, 5, and 9. Continue with our call to prayer, Baruch Hu, page 28 or 146. We sing of everlasting love. And for those of you who are online, you will see a slide. For those of you who are right here, you know the chorus if you don't know all of the words, so sing along.
We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are embraced by arms that find us, even when we are hidden from ourselves. We are touched by fingers that soothe us, even when we are too proud for soothing. We are counseled by voices that guide us, even when we are too embittered to hear. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are supported by hands that uplift us, even in the midst of a fall. We are urged on by eyes that meet us, even when we are too weak for meeting. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. Embraced, touched, soothed, and counseled. Ours are the arms, the fingers, the voices. Ours are the hands, the eyes, the smiles. We are loved by an unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and unending love. We are loved, loved, loved by unending love and
page 34.
Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad.
Shem kevod malchuto leolam va'ed.
May be seated. We'll chant the words of the Via Hafta on page 36 or 154 together.
ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודיך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם בבניך ודיברת בם, בשבתך בביתך ובלכתך בדרך ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך, למען תזכרו ועשיתם את כל מצוותיי, והייתם קדושים לאלוהיכם. אני אדוני אלוהיכם, אשר הוצאתי אתכם מארץ מצרים, להיות לכם לאלוהים. אני אדוני אלוהיכם.
Adonai Elohechem Emet. Turn to page 40. Sing the words of Micha Mocha, our eternal song for freedom and redemption together.
מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש, מי כמוך באלים אדוני, מי כמוך נדר בקודש. נורא תהילה
את יעקב, וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו, ברוך אתה אדוני, גאל ישראל.
On the next page are the words of the Hashkivenu, our nighttime prayer that asks God to spread God's shelter over each of us. As we sing this, I invite you to take a moment just to take a deep breath and think, where are the places that you find shelter? If you're sitting next to someone you love, you can whisper that to them, where are the places you find shelter. If you're streaming with us, maybe think of people or places that you get shelter as we sing this song.
Hashkivenu Adonai Eloheinu L'Shalom, L'Shalom, Ve'amidenu Shomreinu L'Chaim, Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shalom Lecha, Ufros Aleinu Sukkot Shalom Lecha. Shelter us beneath your wings, O Adonai. Guard us from all harmful things, O Adonai. Keep us safe throughout the night, till we wake with morning's light. Teach us, God, wrong from right. Amen. 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 Baruch atah Adonai, haporei Sukkot, Shalom aleinu, ve'al kol amo Yisrael, ve'al Yerushalayim.
On page 46 is the beginning of the Amidah, the central portion of our worship, where on Shabbat we say 7 different blessings corresponding to this sacred day, the 7th day, the day of rest. Somebody once told me that there's nothing in the natural world that cycles in the number 7. I don't know if there's a scientist out there or a botanist that can refute that, but nothing in the natural world that cycles in the number 7, which means this is a holy spiritual number, a day for us to claim as ours for sacred rest and reflection. If you're able, I invite you to rise as we say the words of the meditation and the first 3 blessings together.
Adonai, sefatai tiftach, avotenu, Elohei Avraham, Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Sarah, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Rachel, Elohei Leah, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibor v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, Vekonei Hakol, V'zocher Chasdei Avot V'imahot, U'mevii Geula Livnei Bneihem, Leman Shemo Be'ahava, Melech Ozer U'Moshiach U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham Vezrat Sarah. Atah Gibor Le'olam Adonai, Mechayah Kol Atah Rav Lehoshia, Morid Hatal, Mechalkel Chayim Bechesed, Mechayeh Hakol Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Verofeh Cholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayem Emunato, Lishenei Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Melach, Melech Memit Umechayeh, Umatzmiach Yeshua, Veneman Atal HaChayot HaKol, Baruch Atah Adonai, Mechayeh HaKol. Atah Kadosh v'Shimcha Kadosh, U'Kadoshim b'chol yom yehalelucha Selah. Baruch Atah Adonai, Ha'el HaKadosh. We are now in the month of Elul, the month that is right preceding Rosh Hashanah, the beginning of the year. And it's traditional to sing from Psalm 27, the words Achat Sha'alti. This is a new melody, so I hope you'll like it. Achat שאלתי אותה
Thank you, Cantor Spall. Our season of Elul, where we start to reflect about the coming of the high holidays, and your clergy begin to panic, and all of those things encapsulated in that beautiful song. So
That song didn't have any of that stress.
no,
in it.
no,
Yeah,
sorry,
It
sorry.
doesn't, but
That
it's,
a
you're
different
right,
meaning,
but they're two different
meaning,
things.
So, yeah, sorry. I invite you to turn to page 253. Despite the joys of Shabbat and the joys of Bar Mitzvah and family coming together, we know that there are many who come to our worship in need of healing, personal healing, or they're offering prayers of healing for loved ones or friends. If you're here, or whether you're streaming, we know that people are in need of renewal of body and spirit. So we'll sing the words together in the middle of the page.
May the source of strength, who bless the ones before us, help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing, and let us say Amen.
Our prayer for healing on this Shabbat specifically extends to David Ben Ami, Mason Easley, Arlene Gillian, Rick Gross, Leah Haller Carrito, Dorothy Hupert, Moritz Hupert, Marvin Jones, Joan Carlin, Bernice Kretschmar, Wendy Levine, Dana Marks, Eileen Peak, Peggy Pizzo, Dana Reback, David Baruch Ben Simona, and Donna Spangler. If you're thinking of someone in need of healing, please share their name at this time. Before I invite forward our darshan, or the individual that will be giving our sermon this morning, I want to recognize one other person that's here. I want to recognize Shiri L., who's our newest staff member at Congregation Beth Am, sitting on the bench over there. A special welcome to Shiri L., who is working with our Orchard community, our young-ish postgraduates from college, 20s and 30 years old. So it's awesome to have Shiri L. as part of our team. And as you know, we have so many different communities at Beth Am, including the Orchard, including Beth Am Women, and also including Beth Am Mem. It's a delight to invite forward on this Shabbat Joel Orr and Jerry Spector. Jerry as the president of Beth Am Men, and Joel Orr to offer us sacred words of Torah. I don't want to put sacred on you, Joel, actually. I'm just assuming. So, words of Torah. So,
on behalf of Beth Amen, I'd like to welcome everybody, Shabbat Shalom, and I'd like to invite you, when you have a chance, we have a new display of Beth Amen and all our activities on the wall of the conference room. Despite COVID, we've continued to do a lot of our activities, including our photography club, and by the way, which is open to men and women, our book club open to men and women, and many of the other activities that we do. Even Sukkot. And by the way, I should have mentioned I am co-president with Marcel Bergman. Marcel? Thank you. He rose his hand real quick. Okay. And one of the things we had trouble was what we were going to do for Sukkot. Because normally what the Beth Amen did was to build one outside, but this time with the help of rabbis and Marcel. Guess what? Some of you participated. We had a portable Sukkot in the back of a pickup truck. We advertised the locations throughout the community, and our members that wanted to could go in the Sukkot as it had visited their areas. Purim Spiel. Well, in prior years, and we hope this is coming next year, we had lots of wonderful activities, including in the kitchen, making beer. Again, Marcel directed us on how to make beer. Not my specialty for sure. And we would host the bar, soft drinks and hard drinks, and participate in taking care of that. We hope next year to do that as well. For bar and bar mitzvah, we provide tzedakah boxes starting very soon to hopefully get them in the tradition of tzedakah. We have a Hot Topics breakfast, which has always been online until the very last one, which was held out in our courtyard. And at that point, our rabbis come and bring us a very Hot Topics article, a current article, to discuss and see what we can make of it. We have bridge, we have guys night out, we have many other activities. So if you're not a member of Beth Amen, I got a great bargain for you. $30 for the year. Please join.
Thank you, Jerry. Good evening, Shabbat Shalom to everybody. It's wonderful to be here. I feel rather humbled by the honor of being asked by Bet Amen to speak before you, to share a Dvar Torah. And I thought I would begin by telling you a little bit about myself, so you'll know where I'm coming from. I was born in Brooklyn, like most nice people, in 1947, shortly after the Shoah. My father was a secular Polish Jew who came to Palestine with his non-Zionist parents in 1919 because his father couldn't make a living in their town in Poland. After a few years, he found he couldn't make a living in Yafo, almost becoming Tel Aviv at the time, and so off he went to New York, and the rest of the family followed in 1931. By no effort of intention, I sort of followed in my father's footsteps. Born in Brooklyn, at 3, the family, because of issues with relatives in Israel and the polio epidemic, we moved to Israel. We made Aliyah to Israel when I was 3, and we lived for a while on a kibbutz, and I'd love to spend the whole evening telling you all these wonderful things, but I'll try not to do that so I can get to the Dvar Torah. But then we went back to the States. Then I went again to Israel when I was 13 with my grandfather, stayed in Israel, served in the army, and lived on a kibbutz, and then in Jerusalem, and then came to the States to go to college in New York, which is, of course, the center of the universe, not quite the umphalos, the belly button that Jerusalem is, but approaching it. And my mother was a secular American Jew who loved God, was born to Romanian parents in Brooklyn. My mother's Romanian father, Papa to me, went to Cheder as a child and came to New York City around 1920. All of these were Zionists and socialists. Papa convinced my parents I should be bar mitzvahed, to which they reluctantly agreed. We were living in Puerto Rico at the time. There was a conservative synagogue there, Shaarei Tzedek, and I got a stack of 78 RPM records. Children, you can ask your grandparents what that means. And thus learned Behalotcha, which was my haftarah. Later, I spent years of childhood and high school in Israel, kibbutzim in town. I hold dual citizenship. I always knew I was Jewish and that God is real and that love is my guide because my mother told me so. And despite great peregrinations into something that is also a Jewish minhag of going off to what we call in Hebrew misuot zarim, the torch, strange torches. But years ago, I somehow made a turn and started on my way back to Judaism and met a lot of friends on my way. Now I'm in my 75th year, and I see I'm following a well-trodden path. I'm learning so much, and more than anything, not learning plumbing, but plumbing the profound depths of my ignorance. So here is a crumb from the blessed and infinite bakery of Torah and Yiddishkeit. May it bring a smidgen of nourishment to you. This week's portion that is read in the synagogue is Parashat Shoftim. Parashat Shoftim is one of the more extensive and comprehensive parashot. It covers a whole lot, and it's really quite daunting. One of the changes that Rabbi Morrison brought to Beth Am's Torah study was to follow in our Torah study the order of Parashat HaShavua, the generally recognized subdivision of the Torah into weekly portions. Now, at first, I resisted this approach, but just because old habits die hard and I didn't want to change, but it didn't take me long to realize that it opened easy access to many treasures in the now, things that are going on. You can check out the Parashat HaShavua on hundreds of websites and hear the opinions, the range of thought that is going on today. And it really gave me a very strong feeling of the continuity of Judaism throughout time and throughout space. And being Reformed Jews, we can have our cake and eat it too. And so we simply also took over, the lay people took over our Torah study for Sunday, and we continue as we did before, going sentence by sentence, verse by verse, through the Torah, and we love that, and there are reflections, and it's wonderful. So I invite you to both our Torah studies because you're sure to enjoy them. Now, I learned through taking on the teaching of a couple of these Sunday parashot where to find stuff, where to find what the Jews think about this week's parasha or this week's verse, whichever it is we were headed for. And one of the resources that I recently discovered was it's now a book called Covenant and Conversation by the great Rabbi Lord Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha. He's an amazing teacher, and you get a lot out of his thoughts. And what he does is this book has 3 different approaches of his own to each parasha, and it is so enlightening. It's got so much bandwidth in it. We are in Silicon Valley, excuse the expression, but this is, it's kind of amazing. So that has informed some of what I want to share with you tonight. And I do recommend that to anyone who wants to study the parashot. Now, a quick glance at Rabbi Sachs's writings on Parashat Shoftim reveals the immense scope of issues addressed by this week's portion. For one thing, in this parasha, in these verses from the Torah, we read what ultimately became the structuring of my mind is blanking. You know the expression, the division of labor among the executive, help somebody, legislative, and the judicial. Thank you so much. Yes, who needs a memory when you have such lovely friends? That comes from this parasha, where the kingdom is to be divided into 3 branches of management, you could say. The king, the Kohanim, that is, the priests, and the Levites, the people doing the practical work surrounding Jewish worship. That in itself merits more than one Dvar Torah, and it's wonderful to see how in our non-kingly democracy we have preserved the values that are expounded in that segment. Then there are many other portions, but I realized, in fact, I was a Toastmaster for a while. I was trying to follow in the footsteps of my wife, who was president of our local Toastmasters chapter, and I learned many things through her, by her telling me and also nudging me to go and join Toastmasters so that I could get it, as it were, from the horse's mouth. And one of the things I learned is that if you want to communicate something, pick one focal point. Don't try and tell a great deal, although it's hard for some of us to avoid. So I picked one of the central injunctions of this parasha. That is, we are enjoined, we are commanded to chase after justice. Tzedek, tzedek tirdof, it says in Hebrew. Tzedek, of course, is justice. Tirdof means to chase after. And the 2 words really informed my thoughts about this mitzvah, because I realized, okay, I'm going to chase tzedek, but but what is tzedek? And I thought, well, you know, it's being fair, it's being even-handed, it's doing the right thing. And I realized I had no good definition. Now, as a repentant mathematician, I owe some allegiance to the notion that before you start an argument, you ought to define your terms very carefully. And so, how can I pursue this mitzvah, pursue the mitzvah of tzedek, tzedek, tirdof, if I don't even know what tzedek is? And I realized that that is the major thing that I want to encourage you to think about. When you find yourself, we talk a lot about tzedek in this congregation, and I'm glad that we do. It's an important value that we hold. But it's also important for us to know what it is we're talking about. It's not hard to find issues on which there are two or more sides. Palestine, Israel, need I say more? There are many other issues. There are more things. And one of the things that I want to encourage you to do is to seek out the opposing position on any point where you have decided you want to support tzedek in this area. They're not hard to find. We do have a web. And we have Google right down the street here. And so we can find those things. Now, okay, so what do you do if you don't have a definition? Well, a Supreme Court justice named Potter Stewart had to come up with a definition for obscenity in order to express his position on an issue that came to the court in 1965 about a movie that had one scene in it that some people found greatly objectionable, and he did not. And so in writing his concurrence with the majority opinion, he said, "I shall not attempt today to further define the kinds of material I understand to be embraced within that shorthand description, hardcore pornography, and perhaps I could never succeed in intelligibly doing so. But I know it when I see it, and the motion picture involved in this case is not that." Well, that was an eye-opener for me. I knew the expression, I know it when I see it, but I've always thought it was a cop-out. And now I see that in digging into the riches, the unending riches of the Torah, that we can only go as far as we are able to go, and it's okay if you reach a point where you have to say, I'll know it when I see it, and use that as a supporting argument, just for something out of the box and an original approach to understanding Torah. Now there are Talmud commentaries suggesting that the doubling of the word tzedek refers to two things. One, the letter of the law, and the second, to compromise. So on the one hand, we have the precision of definition. On the other side, we have what is required for coming to terms in a varied society, not just among Jews, but among any people. And that is to accept that compromise is not an abandonment of tzedek, of justice, but rather is a tool that we need as a society. Well, there's much to go into here, and I've already said seek out the advocates of opposing views because they can help you understand the issues, because the bottom line, as Ben Bagbag says in Pirkei Avot, is afoch ba ve'afoch ba dekulei ba. That is the Torah. Turn it over and turn it over, for all things are within it. So I encourage myself and you to continue. Now, here in Bet Am, we have certain resources. I've already mentioned the web, God help us, and the many things that can be found in it, although it requires some sorting and sifting. But that is why we get such wonderful education here at Bet Am, and our untiring rabbis are always willing, and Cantor, I should add, are always willing to respond to any questions or notions that we may have and help us to understand them. So I encourage you to seek. If you're not from Bet Am, you belong to another congregation, seek out your rabbis. I'm sure they'll be happy to help you. So in sum, the pursuit of justice is important to us as Reformed Jews. Parashat Shoftim, this week's parashah, affirms the fundamental nature of this principle. May we all be wise, prudent, and successful in our pursuit of justice. Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Joel, you taught me a new metaphor that I hadn't heard before, but one I'm going to treasure, which is to consider our culture and our textual tradition as a bakery. And I love that. And who hates a bakery? I mean, I haven't yet met the person who does not like a bakery. I'm sure someone now will tell me they do not like bakeries. But it's an image that I'm going to treasure, so thank you so much. We continue with the Aleinu on page 282. We invite you to rise.
Aleinu l'shabeach l'Adon hakol, l'atei gedula liotzer breishi, shelo asanu k'goyei haratzot, velo samanu k'mishpachot ha'adama, shelo sam chelkeinu kahem, v'gohor aleinu kechol hamonam. ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ ביום ההוא, ביום ההוא, יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו, ושמו, ושמו אחד. We're gonna not.
Please be seated. Kaddish is on page 294. And this setting is by Barbara Hollander. It's called God's Gentleman. I wear his battered hat, his bolo tie. The family album shows my eyes and mouth are his. His are my crooked fingers, tracing the spidery script of his last letter. Dearest number one child. God's gentleman, the rabbi called him, and quick-witted, a caring man whose outer and inner selves were one. The whole congregation saw me nodding, smiling, as the words gave my father back to me. In his name, a biblical garden blooms in Arizona. I see my creators in the cool of the day walking to and fro. My father bends to console my mother. Me too, I say. We remember at this time those of our congregation and of its families who have died during the past week. Barry Plotkin, Mika Seiss, aunt of Marcel Bergman. And as I mention the name of someone who you are remembering on this evening, I invite you to rise. Lawrence Reback, Naomi Solomon, Alvin Platt, Gerald Yaffe. For all of them, we are observing Shloshim, the traditional 30-day period of mourning. And we add to their names the names of those for whom we observed Yartzeit this week. Hona Abramovich, Ina Alper, Lillian Banish, Ernest Baum, Mimi Beck, Leo Bienenstock, Carl Blank, Leah C. Blumenkrantz, Shirley Blumenson, Betty Bogan, Ruth Cassell, Jill Cohen, Julian Harris Cohen, Marshall Denenberg, Florence Dolan, Thomas S. Doran Jr., Sylvia Dressler, Bernard Ector, Laura Alligator, Ralph Epstein, Boris Fleischman, Goldie Lipschitz Frittis, Marion Givens, Jackie Glater, Eleanor Goldberg, Peter Goldberg, Lorraine Gross, Regina Guthoner, Stuart Hauser, Milton Hirsch, Marilyn Hoffman, Richard Hoffman, Sophie Eisenstein-Lipkin, Micah Jarvis, Yvonne Jolly, Bia Kafka, Fania Kahan, Ruth Cantor, Fanny Katz, Albert Kaufman, Abraham Leonov, Sharon Lipson, Haya Nemovna Medzersky, Dina Malenko, George Joseph Miller, Joyce Miranda, Andrew Moser, Aaron Nemirovsky, Martin Joseph Newalt, Keith Norton, Natan Pelix, Yevgenia Pelix, John Pronovost, Pete Ryder, George Reiter, Ida Rosenblum, Maury J. Rubin, Mirko Rudman, Heinz Schimoller, Jack Schreier, Bernard Shapiro, Michael Sinton, Dr. Edward H. Stein, Sally Sussman, Diane Turman, Max Toder, Manuel Trub, Moishe Vilgo, Anna Weisblatt, Samuel Weinberg, Barbara Weiss, Sylvia Weiss, Miriam Wilnai, Madeline Winter. Are there any other names? Zichronam levracha, may their memory be for a blessing. And we now stand with you and recite Kaddish together. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei rabbah, b'yalma divarach yirutei v'yamlich malchutei, b'chayechon v'yomechon uv'chayei dechol beit Yisrael, ba'agala v'zman kariv v'yimaru amen. Yehei shmei rabbah mevarach le'olam alamei almaya, Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitraman v'yitnaseh, v'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalal shemei dekudesha b'richu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tush b'chata v'nechamata, da'amiran b'alma v'yimaru amen. Yehei shalama rabba min shemaya, v'chayim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimaru amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav, hu ya'aseh shalom, Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imeru. Amen.
As Joel talked about tonight, and Max will chant tomorrow morning, the words of our Torah portion, Parashat Shoftim, Commanda Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof. As we do each month at Congregation Beth Am, we collect tzedakah for an important organization, either locally or in Israel. This month we'll be collecting for an organization called Keren B'Kavod, which is the Center for Social and Community Activity of the Israeli Reform Movement, which assists populations in distress throughout the land of Israel, including new immigrants, Bedouins, the elderly, lone soldiers, disadvantaged women, and others of the most vulnerable in the Israeli society. We ask you to be as generous as possible. You can put a couple bucks if you carry money on Shabbat in the tzedakah box, or contribute online, or if you need to, send a check to the Beth Am office. Also, in the spirit of Tzedek Tzedek Tirdof, we have a few extra slots for our monthly breakfast at Hope's Corner in Mountain View. We'll be serving at the homeless shelter there this coming Wednesday morning at 7 a.m. If you're able to volunteer for a few hours on Wednesday morning, we could use an extra hand or two. Please find me after services or shoot me an email, and we'll be sure to connect you. We turn on this, we sing this special song of peace, Adonai Oz, and then as our period of Elul happens, we have a special alarm clock to the soul.
Adonai Oz, ve'amo yitein Adonai, yivarech et amo. Adonai Oz, ve'amo yitein Adonai, yivarech et amo. All right, we're going to blow the shofar because it's Elul. Here we go. I'll say Tekiah. Here we go. Tekiah.
Yasher koach.
Shabbat Shalom. L'shana tova, everyone.
It's rare that we have in our midst a deputy counsel. Even more so, Mr. Kusayama Sato. Sato has also spent a good deal of time in Israel. And so I want to invite him forward to break bread with us for Motzi. And if you want to do a very short word of greeting, that would be lovely. Or you could just come on up.
Nice
to meet you. You want to say Shabbat Shalom?
Shalom.
Okay. It's all right. Please.
Baruch atah Adonai melech haolam,
Motzi.
motzi lech mi haaretz.
Oh,
Amen.
Amen.
Shabbat
Shabbat Shalom. Thank you.
Get it, Max. Come on.
A special thanks to Jason Rusev on drum and Jacob Richter over there behind the wall in the glass. That's Jacob on piano. Thank you, Jacob. It was fabulous. Thank you, Jason.